When you first turn on your system, this is what you'll see. The emergency e-stop is activated and it needs to be reset. To do this, pull out the e-stop button located below the HMI and then press in the blue fault reset button to eliminate the fault. You will know that the fault is eliminated by the top status bar switching to green, signaling that you are stopped in auto mode. All right, welcome. When you open up your system, you'll see that at the very top is the status bar showing you what the system is doing and what its status is. Below that, on the top left and right, you'll have both the date and time, followed by our main buttons to get to all the windows. The first is the main screen, which allows you to operate things in auto mode. The next would be the manual screen, allowing you to operate things in manual mode, followed by your twin tank screen, your recipe edit screen, and your alarm history screen. At the very bottom is where you can jump to edit recipes as opposed to just selecting them, as well as set the load cells to the correct weight ratio. On the bottom right, you have your login entering information in case you have multiple logins, and then on the right middle is where you can select language. All right, we'll begin by going to the manual screen. In the manual screen is where you can manipulate each piece of equipment bypassing all of the sensors so that you don't need product to turn things on or off. This is great for clean out or startup to make sure everything's functioning properly before you actually start sending products down the line. Even though we're in the manual screen, we can't turn things on yet until we have changed to manual mode from auto mode by selecting that purple button there. Once there, we are stopped, but we can press that green button to start up in manual mode. Nothing's on yet, even though we are started in manual mode because we haven't selected it. You can go ahead and select a piece of equipment, press that green button to start it, the red button to stop it, or that button in the bottom left corner to adjust the speed. So we want things to go a little bit faster, we can do that, or a little bit slower, just go in and change that and enter the button. Then once you press the green button, it'll start up and change to green. And when you stop it, it'll be yellow. So you can see the drum is started in green, and we'll go ahead, turn that off, and then manipulate some of the other pieces of equipment. All right, we'll turn on the next two conveyors by selecting them and pressing that green button. You need to close out each individual screen there before you can select the next piece of equipment. And then you'll see turning on the pumps, once we turn those on, the gray lines around them will turn green, showing the path of liquid. If the three-way valves were positioned in a different direction, that green lines would light up differently, and you'll see that happen again for the other pump there. Those three-way valves are controlled either in auto mode by the recipe and the sensors, or in the twin tank screen in manual mode. And here we are just turning everything off before we move on to the next step, where we'll jump into auto mode and the main screen. All right, we'll go ahead and press that main screen button there, bringing us into the main screen where we can run from auto mode during our production phase. You'll see at the top at the status bar that we are still in manual mode. So we're going to want to change that by going and pressing the purple button on the bottom for the auto select. Now we're stopped in auto mode, and we'll need to press the green button to start in auto mode. Then the recipe will take over and equipment will start turning on. You'll see the drum turns orange, meaning that it's waiting a predetermined amount of seconds before it'll start to rotate to make sure that it has product in there. The manifold would then also turn on if it was selected. You'll see me allow the manifold to spray. That button allows you to toggle it and turn it on or off as you need per your recipes. The nozzles are purging, making sure that they're clean and clear and able to spray and hit that rate that you need. We'll turn that spray manifold off, and you'll see that the pump is still on. That is that middle button. It is important to usually have that button on to make sure that the product in the manifold is recirculating and staying turbulent. That way you have an even full mixture. But if you need, you can turn that off from the auto screen. The last button on the top there is the use to day tank fill. That button allows you to stop the day tank from being filled even when the sensors call out when you're at the end of a production run. The other buttons we see there are the pounds per hour, showing you what your base product rate is, as well as the oil that you're spraying in liters per minute or gallons per hour, and then what the set point for that slurry spray is. To tear the conveyor, if anything goes wrong, you can press that button there, tear the conveyor to set it back to 0 so that it sees correct product in case you have gunk built up on the conveyor. All right, so the last button here is the Clean Out Enable button. When this light blue button is pressed, it causes the vibratory conveyors in the drum to continue to operate regardless of seeing product. That way it cleans out all the product that's left over at the end of the run, making sure you don't have any lost product at that time. All right, here we have the twin tank screen. From here we can operate everything on the twin tank skid along with all the pumps, valves, and motors leading up to the spray manifold. On the top right side we start with the buttons to regulate temperature. You have the 3 valves that regulate the heating loop. The first one sends the hot water in a loop circulating back to the heater till it gets up to temperature. And then the next 2 valves are the ones opening up the jacket on each tank to hot water to get it up to temperature. Next to them you'll see the different set points you can set for the main heater and each of the 2 tanks to make sure that you always hit the temperature you want. Below that block you have the 2 mixer motors that will keep the slurry suspended inside each tank. After that is the main pump that sends the slurry from the mix tank to the use tank or recirculates the slurry inside of the mix tank. Then you have the transfer valve that'll send slurry from the mix tank to the use tank when it is ready and at a satisfactory recipe. After that is the pump that will go from the use tank to the day tank when it needs to be refilled or to recirculate to keep the use tank slurry suspended. Then you have the blower motor that will allow the product to spray and atomize outside of the manifold. And lastly, the pump that sprays product from the day tank through the manifold into your drum. All right, next we'll press the valves manual button. This brings us to a bunch of buttons that allow us to individually operate parts of the system in manual mode only, regardless of the sensors or what the other parts are doing. So you see me there selecting the different nozzles, turning them on and off. You won't see the change until you close and reopen the screen. I can activate the valves sending heated water to and from the jackets, regardless of the temperature listed, as well as forcibly transferring liquid from the use tank to the day tank, or from the mix tank to the use tank, or from the day tank through to the manifold or to be recirculated. All right, we're in the recipe selection screen where you can scroll up and down and select the recipes you want to work with. Load that recipe, press Recipe Edit Twin Tank on the bottom right. Once you're in the Recipe Edit screen, you can change the values for any single one of the parameters. Just select the value for that parameter, input the new value you would like, and then click Enter. Once you have all the pertinent values entered in, it's important to adjust how the slurry will be measured. On the bottom left, there's a teal box that allows you to toggle between 2 options to have it be based off of the percentage of the base product flow rate, or have your slurry be set to a fixed gallons per hour or liters per minute. All right, now it's important to have the nozzles individually activated. For certain recipes where you have a low flow rate, you won't want all 4 nozzles activated to make sure that you get good atomization. You can deselect some, or you can have all of them activated. If you have any questions about any of these parameters, feel free to contact PPM and we'd be happy to explain them to you. Lastly, you'll want to name your recipe. Select the recipe button at the top and type in the recipe name you would like and simply press Enter. Once you have entered the name for your recipe, you'll want to save it. So press that green Save button on the top right, and that'll save that recipe to that recipe slot in the recipe selection screen. Now you can load that recipe and run that immediately, or you can scroll back to any of the other recipes you have. All right, we'll go to the load cell calibration screen. Once here, you can calibrate the load cells on your conveyor. Make sure that it has no added weight on it and is not leaning up against anything or anything leaning up against it. Press that button and the process will calibrate the load cells, making sure that you're getting a correct measurement. If over time you have buildup of product or some distortion to the pan, that may change and you'll want to redo that calibration. You can also re-tear the conveyor and set it back to 0 with nothing on it by pressing that button there, and you're good to go.